Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the one and only Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. Good to see you.
We need to have a conversation about inflation. I actually see in the media and my data sources really a two tracks, and they are not close together. And frankly, one of them is probably going to be right, and the other one is spectacularly wrong. Right now, we have the camp led by Kathy Wood, Jeremy Siegel, Elon Musk that basically says the Fed needs to stop. Deflation and disinflation is around the corner. Kathy Wood in a tweet storm over the weekend talked about 1921, where inflation apparently was negative 15%. And I can't imagine. Can you imagine inflation going from what now 7.7 to just negative 7.7? Do you see that as possible? But that's what Kathy Wood is talking as she sees coming and coming quickly.
That's hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, we haven't seen it since then. That was a very different time. And I saw her tweet, talking about the roaring 20s. And again, she's just trying to keep capital from leaving and to keep it coming in. And I think it's a delusional tweet. I think that to me just showed desperation and delusion at a
Desperation.
level we haven't seen out of her in a long time. Because I'm telling you, all my stuff, it's innovation. And as soon as it turns, and all that. And I mean, she just, it's just really interesting and wild. But to think that, I mean, we haven't, how is that possible? I mean, you'd have to
Yeah,
completely shut the economy down in order for that to happen. And I mean, we didn't even have that when the pandemic was happening.
yeah. We
Um,
got we got one quarter or one. I think it was one quarter, like negative zero point 0.8 or something, when we shut the country down. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Nobody was doing anything. So, I mean, you'd have to have, I mean, what was happening then? I mean, you talk about the Great Depression. And, so the real question is a Great Depression possible? No, I mean, it's just not even
I don't.
possible.
Yeah, I don't see. In her tweet storm, she talked about basically 1921. We go to disinflation, then we have the Roaring Twenties, then they raise rates, and the Great Depression ensues. And she's like, "That's what's going to happen. We're on our way to the Great Depression." I'm like,
Yeah, we've talked about that before. I just don't see that as, I mean, anything's possible, right? But
yeah,
you got to, what's realistic? What's likely? And I mean, it's just too big of an economy. We're globally connected, joined at the hip. I mean, again, you'd have to shut the world down for that to happen. And back then it was a very different environment, very different time. You had a fraction of the, so here's the thing. This is why I'm saying it's delusional. You had a fraction of the population, fraction of the GDP, fraction of the jobs that were created. I mean, everything now, look at it now. People can work anywhere from anywhere. You can create money out of thin air doing stuff. I mean, it's just such a different economy and environment. It just doesn't, it's delusional. It doesn't make any
yeah,
sense what she's saying. And again, it's desperation. Just like she wrote the letter to the Fed,
yeah.
she's trying to, 5 years, now it's 10 years and things like that. And I mean, I get it. I understand she's desperate, and her world's collapsing. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long people are going to stick it out with her.
Yeah, I don't know. I just saw a crazy stat. I actually hope this one isn't right, but apparently this year, when you take inflows versus outflows, she is still positive $1 billion. People
Mm-hmm.
have given her $1 billion more than they've taken out. I don't get it, but hey, it's all right.
Dollar cost averaging, man. They're throwing
I
money.
guess, yeah. Tax loss harvesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now it makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, you're a lot of stocks you could argue are at a bottom or close to a bottom. They've drawn down 80, 90% a lot of her things. So now's the time to buy. The time to buy
Maybe,
wasn't
yeah.
a year ago when you and I were like,
What are you
it's
doing? Yeah.
right. That wasn't the time to buy. So yeah, you could kind of see
Yeah,
some inflows there
yeah, I
because there is
guess.
some upside potential. So that makes sense. But a
That is actually
depression,
a very good point. Yeah.
a depression just doesn't make any sense. Now,
But,
a roaring 20s kind of thing. So forget all that other nonsense.
yep.
Can we see an extreme bull market scenario, coming out of this once the dust settles? Absolutely. Because again, everything's down 90, 95%. Innovation is going to keep happening. Tech's going to keep happening. All these things are going to keep happening. Crypto space is going to explode once that gets, settled and regulation and all that. There's a lot of capital waiting to come into that. A lot of innovation out there waiting to happen. But is Peloton going to come back and go back to where is it, is Netflix? No. Here's the other thing she doesn't talk about that a lot of people just ignore and miss is that the one thing about technology that we know is it gets replaced quick.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Does.
you got one, another one's going to come along that's better, more efficient, cheaper, and replace it. So, just like batteries, and the great analogy is go back to the technological revolution. So we went from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy to a tech-driven economy. And, you went from, basically the 8-track tape to the cassette tape to the CD to the MP3, and, the evolution of all that. One thing always ends up replacing another. The whole Blockbuster, analogy of Netflix replacing Blockbuster. Now Netflix is becoming obsolete and is getting replaced, right? And or at least the way they operate and how they are in the competition that's out there. So that's what she's ignoring. She's ignoring innovation against her own bets that are going to outperform them and displace them through innovation. So,
Yeah.
the
other
it's really
side, the other side of inflation, Barron's actually wrote a pretty interesting article talking about inflation. I believe it said anytime inflation was over 6%, it might have been 5, but I think it was 6%. It can take up to a decade to get it back to 2%. And that's kind of the opposite, right? If I look at what Kathy is and Elon and Jeremy are saying, and then, what Barron is, that's the other extreme. So think about that. We're talking about inflation coming down substantially in 2023, but what if it takes 5 years? What if it takes 8 years? That's something that, I really haven't given a lot of thought to.
Well, it could, because what's been done so far hasn't stopped people from spending. What drives inflation? People spending. I mean, people are still buying cars at, stupid levels. People are still spending money. And let me tell you, I work with people all around the world. There's a lot of people still have a lot of money, and we've seen real estate values, we've seen stock portfolios that are declining now, crypto, but a lot of people took money off the table. There's a lot of money on the sidelines. So I think, like to the point of the whole stock market, I mean, there's a lot of money on the sidelines that are waiting to come back into the markets at the right time, as we see with these rallies. Somebody's buying that stuff.
Yeah,
So
it is a two-party transaction. You're right.
yeah.
Somebody's
And
buying,
there's
somebody's
pension
selling.
funds that need to earn yield and endowments and things like that. So there's capital that has to allocate. It has to go to work. So, it's going to be very difficult for the Fed to destroy demand enough to really bring inflation down. I mean, we have a lot of demand. The holiday season is going to be a real big indicator. We have retail coming out this week, a couple
Yeah,
of them.
that's true. Starting
So
tomorrow, I think Home Depot and Walmart tomorrow.
we've had strong earnings the last few times, and what does that do? It gives the Fed more ammunition to, keep on tightening and, keep on keeping on. And, the way you're in a severe bear market is when one little iota of a whimper of the Fed doing something exponentially changes the course of the markets. Until that stops, you're in a bear market. That doesn't happen in bull markets. That happens in bear markets. And
Good point.
so we got retail earnings coming out. We've got the holidays coming up. Again, this next few months, 2 months, is going to tell us a whole lot about where the economy stands, where the consumer stands. And I think the economy is much stronger than what the Fed is realizing. It's going to take a lot longer than most people understand to affect that demand. So yeah, it could take a while.
Yeah. So when I kind of break down both of these opinions, I kind of sit in the middle of them. If you stack inflation, like, I don't know, dice on top of each other, I actually think inflation is going to break down in 3 components. I think there's the easy component, supply chain loosening up, retail, stuff becoming discounted because of flooded inventory. So the question is, how much of, I'm just going to use 8% as a round number. How much of 8% is going to be easy? To me, let's just call it 2%. All right. So 2% is going to fall off quickly. What do I mean by quickly? In the next 6 months, right? I see that. And then there's the hard, which to me, hard is we've got to take unemployment up from 3.7 to 5.2. It's going to take time, multiple layoffs. You're going to scare the consumer. They're going to retreat. They're going to pull back. That takes quarters. And then there's the structural, really, really, really hard stuff. So the question in my mind that I'm always asking myself, how much is easy, how much is hard, and how much is really, really hard? Because based on that split, that tells me how long this could take.
Yeah. And, the consumer is still strong. People are still spending, and we haven't seen job losses at scale yet that really, move into that direction. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And, again, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, could a Great Depression happen? I don't know. I mean, without a world war, it'd be hard to imagine that, I mean, shutting down. I mean, again, the economy's too strong. How can you, how can you say something like that's possible? But, inflation, can food start backing up? Well, what's going to make that back up? What's going to make prices back up? If you're manufacturing cars and selling them and you're making more money, producing less cars at higher prices, why are you going to change that?
Yeah.
Housing market, builders, builders are building at a level that they know people are willing to pay. I mean, people are still paying, exponentially high prices for housing right now. I talked to a couple of people over the weekend that, or a couple that's looking for a house, and, they had a young baby. They're living in an apartment. Like, we have to have a house. And they're like, and I'm like, you're buying at the peak, still, even now you're still at the peak. It's come down a little bit. And they're like, yeah, we realize that, but, we don't care. We have to have a house. We're just going to rent it, as we move on to the next one. So it'll be a long-term thing and we're not really worried about it. So you still have demand out there and lack of supply. So it's going to take a while to correct these things.
Yeah, the other thing you have is in builders. It's something I wrote down this morning, but did not talk about on my daily financial news. Builders have more options. Taylor Morrison, I think it's number 7 builder in the country, is now going out and building for rent communities. That's they're going to take a portion of their crews, and that's what they're going to do. They tested it in 2022. They're going to do more of it in 2023. D.R. Horton, the largest home builder in the country, spent $1.7 billion doing that so far. They're going to do more of that in 2023. So there's people talking about builders going to zero. They're just going to pivot, right? They're just going to build something else, right? Maybe they'll slow down.
There's a couple of them are doing, rent to owner finance, so they're doing them that way as well.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you come build with us, we'll rent it to you. And then when, interest rates come down, you can buy it from us.
Yeah. We'll give you a little credit. You give us $1,200 or $2,000. We give you $200, a credit against the deposit. And yeah, it's the system will keep moving forward. So I think you're right. I think the economy is much stronger, going on. And again, I go back to Fed Waller's comment this morning. I really think they were pissed off when the market went up 5% last week. They're like, God damn it. Why is the market doing this? We got to go higher. We got to talk harder. It's a crazy time.
It is. And I mean, they know they've got a hard job ahead of them. And I think they finally realized it, since Jackson Hole, when they came out and said, look, we're focused. Yeah. We're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to use all our tools. And, 50 basis points for the next meeting isn't locked in yet. We'll have to see. If inflation comes out hot, they're going to hit it hard.
Yeah, I think PCE next week's a big deal because,
Yeah. And there's a lot of data leading up to that will indicate where does the economy stand, what's going on and things like that. So again, fascinating times. I mean, we have no precedents. You can't look at really any point in history to try to think, or analyze where we're going. Disinflation. Sure. Well, prices come down. That's disinflation. That's easy. Stagflation, is that possible? Sure.
Yeah. That kind of feels to me like there's lots of options, lots of possibilities, but stagflation kind of feels to me as the most likely outcome. And again, it's maybe not most likely by a big number, but I mean, it's a weird time.
It is. And you just can't measure it against anything else because again, all those times in the past, less people, less GDP, less opportunities for people to earn, not only just virtually everywhere, but multiple jobs. I mean, you hear stories out there of people that are working for Google, Microsoft, Apple, all that, Netflix remotely. And then they're, moonlighting somewhere else at the same time, in the same hours and getting double salaries. So,
yeah. The All In podcast talked about, they bleeped out the name, but they talked about somebody who is an engineer at Google and another tech company double dipping on their salary. And they only work 25 hours a week when they're supposed to have 2 full-time jobs. That is, that's not good. That's not good.
It happens. It happens. That's the whole remote world, thing that's going on. That's why this whole job market measurement is, so distorted and, things just aren't adding up. It's really interesting.
Very, very cool. Well, do me a favor, Greg, where can people find you?
Yeah. GregDickerson.com.
Thank you so much.